Well, imagine for a second that you're a terrified survivor. You've just pulled yourself up from the freezing surf, shivering, gasping for breath, and you're listening to the dark around you. Today, in this explainer, we absolutely aren't just looking at dry historical data. We are breaking down the chilling source material surrounding one of the most famously haunted coordinates on the entire planet. So catch your breath, and let's explore exactly what happens when the duty of a lighthouse keeper stretches far beyond the grave.
Now tell me, did you honestly think the light was meant to save you? Right, it's literally the first thing every survivor asks themselves when they drag their battered bodies onto these rocks. You probably looked up to the massive lighthouse hoping for salvation from the freezing, churning currents of the Celtic Sea. But as you shiver there, kind of absorbing the reality of this place, you realize this is a very different kind of sanctuary. You haven't been saved. You've just been caught in a much older, much darker net.
Let's pinpoint exactly where you are in this haunting lore. Fastnet Rock is infamously known as Ireland's teardrop. The source material describes it perfectly as a monolithic black cathedral. I mean, this isn't just some structure of stone and glass sitting on a jagged crown in the ocean. It's a monument where your duty to the light simply does not end with your final heartbeat. The sea here claws at the very foundations of the world, and the lighthouse serves the unquiet spirits who absolutely refuse or are unable to leave their post. To truly grasp the source material, you have to feel it. I mean, breathe in that freezing storm right now. Feel the bitter sting of salt and that sharp, metallic taste of iron in the air. That sudden drop in temperature you're feeling isn't just the wind, it's the cold breath of those who have completely forgotten what the sun's warmth even feels like. Listen closely over the churning waves. You'll hear the distant, mournful wails of the foghorn, and right beneath that, the terrifying, heavy sound of massive lantern gears grinding, operated by unseen hands. So you might be wondering, okay, where are the flesh and blood guys who are actually supposed to run this facility? Well, when the deep winter gale hits and the horizon is completely swallowed by foam and fury, the living keepers just vanish. People on the mainland love to tell themselves that these poor souls simply got swept away, claimed by the violent currents. But the lore we're exploring today reveals a much more structured, systemic truth about their disappearance.
The source texts visualize this terrifying fate through these incredibly frantic diary entries, left behind by doomed keepers as they realized their mortal time was up. Get this, they're penned in this eerie, supernatural ink, literally made of seawater and shadow. And they spell out the ultimate fate of the men stationed here. They are merely promoted to the permanent staff. Once their mortal time ends, there is no afterlife for them. Their contract is binding. They just join the unseen crew keeping the gears turning through the blackest nights.
We really need to understand the mechanics of this supernatural employment. Because these keepers aren't ghosts in the traditional sense, with unfinished business or lingering trauma. No, they are prisoners of their own unwavering devotion. They are bound by a sacred, completely suffocating pact made with the ancient legends and nameless gods lurking right beneath those churning waves. The deep gods demand a light, and the keepers provide it. It's an inescapable contract signed in saltwater and sealed in eternity.
And here's the wild part. The Phantom crew is highly organized, and they are always recruiting. They whisper constantly through the howling storm, promising the terrified living that their impending doom isn't actually the end. They insist that death is just a transition to a more perfect, eternal service. Just imagine hearing those words echoing out of the fog while you're desperately clinging to the freezing rocks. It's a deeply chilling reframe of mortality.
Okay, so what actually happens when disaster strikes? Like, what happens when a ship approaches these hidden, jagged reefs in the dead of night? Well, this brings us to what the source material calls the Nightmare Mercy. The Phantom crew awakens from the deep, drawn by the tragedy. But they don't just watch, they actively participate in the rescue. But their motives are entirely self-serving to the lighthouse itself.
The lore lays out this highly efficient supernatural protocol. Let's call it the rhythm of the damned. First, they wake up to the heavy sound of those grinding gears. Then, pale, translucent hands take over the lantern. Next, they drive the beam with such force that it burns intensely, almost like a dying star. Fourth, they actually save the sailors from the black depths. But why? Well, the final step is the kicker. They do it only to ensure the cycle of the lighthouse continues. They literally pull you from the water just so you can eventually take the watch.
This grand deception is really the core of Fastnet Rock's legend. You probably thought the light was this warm, comforting guide for ships to return safely to their families, right? Actually, scratch that. The source material reveals a much grimmer reality. The light isn't a guide home at all. It's a blazing warning to the living that the boundary between the safety of the shore and the terrifying abyss is razor thin, unfathomably thin.
And between the terrible storms, the work just keeps going. Under that suffocating ancient pact, the Phantom Keepers move with terrifying rhythmic precision through these eternal tasks. They polish brass that has physically been dull for over 100 years. They meticulously log horrific weather patterns in those spectral books. They stand completely still upon the gallery, dead eyes locked on the horizon, waiting patiently for the next storm.
Now picture the storm around you reaching its absolute screaming climax. You look up at the lantern groom the exact moment the beacon stops shining its standard white and begins pulsing with a sickening, vibrant green light. That is when you know the Phantom Crew is at full strength. It's literally the visual signature of the deep gods claiming the storm. That nauseating green glow washes over the black rock, lighting up those pale, translucent hands working the machinery right above you.
Bathes in that horrific green glow, the Spectral Crew just watches. This final, desperate entry in the shadowed logbook really captures the ultimate reality of their existence. They're just waiting for the next soul to join their ranks in the eternal, thankless vigil of the damned. You see, the structured order of the Phantom Keepers requires constant replenishment. The sea takes, the lighthouse keeps, and the vigil remains completely unbroken.
So here we are at the end of our explainer. The storm is peaking all around you, that sickly green light is pulsing against your wet skin, and the massive mechanical gears are grinding loudly overhead. As the cold breath of the Forgotten washes over you and the ancient gods call out from the freezing foam, the lore leaves you with just one final, lingering question. Are you ready to take your eternal shift?